Hello, bridge builders! I'm here with some exciting news. The first volume of interviews is now available on Amazon.com. The link can be found at eatlunchandboardgame.com. I promise that all proceeds from sales of this book will go right back into this podcast and channel. Whether that is new and better audio equipment for the podcast or video equipment for the YouTube channel, or even more games to review, the money will not be wasted. Click over to Amazon and get your copy of Eat Lunch and Board Game, the first course today. And thank you for supporting the show. Welcome back to Eat Lunch and Board Game. I'm your host, Adam Collins. And with me today, I have the host of Board Game Binge podcast and owner of 10 Robots Games, James Staley. How you doing, James?
I'm doing great, Adam. How you doing?
Oh, I'm not doing too bad. You're up in Canada, right?
I am. Well, I guess it's up depending on where we're talking from, but yeah.
I'm down. I'm down in St. Louis. You're up in Canada.
Yeah, I'm just central Canada, so in the province of Ontario. Most people have heard of Toronto, and I'm just north of Toronto by about an hour.
I love Toronto. It's one of my favorite cities. There's so much to do, so much beautiful seascape right there on the Great Lakes.
Yeah, there's a lot to see. Toronto is, it's kind of one of those areas where you get in a car and you drive straight north and you are in cottage country or, cabins and, just nature. Right. And so you don't have to travel far to really diversify the things you get involved with. The city itself is gorgeous. It is one of the safest cities, I think, in the world per capita. Very low crime rate, very safe to walk around. There's tons of things to see, museums and so forth. So art galleries and, yeah, it's a cool place. And most people live in Ontario that are in the Greater Toronto area will commute in. All right. So if they work in the city, they'll usually live in a suburb, anywhere from a half hour to an hour out, and they'll drive in.
Yeah, I got a parking ticket while visiting one of the museums downtown. So we can't bring my wife's car back into Canada. They may not let us out.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things you have to watch for there is they classify every road technically as a highway under the Traffic Act, so that way they can hit you with like $100 fine. Yeah, it's brutal.
It's good to know.
Take the transit.
Take the transit. Yeah, we took my son. Oh man, he was so little when we took him up there on vacation, and so he had like the little passport card from the U.S. and my wife, I can't remember where we were thinking about going, and I'm like, he's probably going to need a new one because he's way older than when he got that little passport card. Man, he's like so little, so cute, and then it's like he's this young child now, and before he was like this little baby. So for anybody who doesn't know what you do, other than I guess you can talk about your podcast and your board game company. So
the Board Game Binge podcast is it's a weekly podcast. We actually shoot it live. So anybody that wants to watch it live is typically at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Mondays and Thursdays. And it's a half-hour format, so very, very quick and tight in and out. So if you want to come and either watch it live, you can comment. We'll try to get to the questions as we go through with our guests. Or if you're listening to it or watching it on the replay, you can download it anywhere you get your favorite podcast, Board Game Binge podcast. You can listen to it while you brush your teeth, drive to work, or whatever. So it's pretty awesome. It's a lot of fun. 130 episodes in now. And then the other part of the business is 10 Robot Games. I'm the owner of that company. This company is relatively young. I think my first Kickstarter, which kicked off the company, was in 2018. I wasn't really in the industry before that. I've always played board games since I was a kid. Love board games. Started creating my own games when I was in university. And the first game I created, actually the second game I created was this game called Tanks at the time. And then I shelved it for like 20 some odd years. And it wasn't until Kickstarter came and, I had a brother that was now much older and said, "Hey, you should put your game on Kickstarter." And I was like, "What? Yeah, let's check it out." And that kind of started this whole journey. So for me, my podcast is really focused on trying to learn as much as I can about the industry from people that know a lot more than I do. right? So we'll have everything from publishers to designers to artists, content creators. We've had even like digital gaming companies on. We try to approach this industry from as many different angles as we possibly can. Quite frankly, in my pursuit of knowledge and learning, and hopefully help me inform both our game design and publishing, as well as it's really turned into just a pure joy to get to meet all these people and really make some friends in the industry. I do want to give a quick shout out to Mike Bruner, who is the producer of that show. He and I are the tag team on the podcast, although my face is usually the one you see. I got to give equal credit to Mike. He is just a wizard behind the scenes. He lines up most of our guests. He is so well connected, way more tapped in than I am. And it's just awesome having him as a partner in crime on this. So I just want to give him a shout out.
No, I get it. And the fact you do it live is amazing.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I've been on a couple of shows live, but I cannot imagine right now. I am not set up for that. And so the first one of yours I watched was with a fellow mutual friend of ours, Joe Slack.
Oh, Joe. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, they're doing this live. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is insane. And I'm sitting there going, nope, not yet.
Yeah, we've had Joe back a few times. Actually, he's running the I think the Pro Spiel for Canada Pro Spiel in Toronto this coming weekend. I'm going to try to make it there on the Sunday. Joe's a great guy. He is a wealth of knowledge, especially when it comes to game design. And I reach out to him all the time for advice, and he's just a really, really good guy. Also on the Tin Robot games, I do want to give a shout out as well to my brother, Adam, who is my other partner in crime on the game side. He and I co-design most of our games, and he has been my sounding board for everything we work on. And again, another guy behind the scenes, but certainly his hands is involved in literally every aspect of our games that we publish.
And he's got a great name.
Exactly.
So how did you get into gaming? You said you started off as a kid?
Yeah, that's yeah. So I, like most people, played games when I was young. I have a young face, I've been told. I'm actually in my mid 40s, and so I'm an 80s kid. And so I grew up, playing Risk, Monopoly, Stock Ticker, playing the Game of Life, really the classics, right? And Othello, right? Things like this.
Man,
Connect Four.
yeah.
These are the games when I grew up. And it wasn't until my first year of university where I started this journey really with my hate of Monopoly at the time. And no disservice to Parker Brothers, and they've really created a classic that I think will stand the test of time, and it has to stand the test of time. But for me at the time, as the people I was playing with, I didn't like the way that game was structured in a way that it generated a lot of fights in amongst our family. And for me, I wanted to get away from that. I know you're smiling because I'm sure you've had this.
So many.
Yeah, right. It's like, what do you mean I'll trade you? My dad would say, he would have the greens, right? And he'd say, hey, I'll trade you. I'll give you two of the oranges for two of your greens. And he'd get a set, and I wouldn't. And I'd be like, well, that doesn't make sense. And he's like, well, it's 2 for 2, 2 for 2. And I'm like, yeah, but you get a full set. Yeah, but I'm trading it. Like, and it was just these kind of dynamics.
Have the opportunity for the third one.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. So this made my blood boil. And so my first game I ever created was almost like the anti-Monopoly. What I did is I tried to create a game that was very much going around the board like Monopoly, but in a way that was more equal. So everything was more equalized. Trading was more simplified, more equal, more fair. Everybody got to be the car because everyone fought over the cars. Everybody got a car in this game. And that was kind of my first game I'd ever created. And I played this with my university mates, and they loved that they played it. And then from there, I created another game called this Tanks game. And this Tanks game was literally made on a cookie sheet. I had a cookie sheet. I wanted something that allowed me to have the pieces to stick to the board. So I used, Microsoft Excel at the time, created my grid, right? Like a checkerboard grid on this cookie sheet, magnets that were glued to tacks. And so the tacks were the tanks. I took the local pizza magnets off the fridge with the guy's pizza number, cut those
Oh,
into
right.
squares, put our bunkers and our
Yes.
flags stuff on that. So everything stuck to the board. It was
That's
a fully
awesome.
travel game. It was huge because it was on a cookie
Oh,
sheet,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
the pieces didn't go anywhere. And we played that game a lot. And I used to bring that home, and I would play with my younger brother, who at the time was like 8 years old. And he would play. So I play with my friends at school, and then I would come home and I play with my brother, who was much younger. And I found it was a game that really played well for a lot of ages, and it was quick, right? It's a quick kind of little skirmish type game, very simple. One die you're using to determine if your tank's move or not. The other one you're using to shoot, right? So you're either moving or you're shooting at a target. Very, very simple game. And that's how I kind of got into the industry. And then I parked that. And because at the time, this is when there were 3 companies running all the games in the industry. The industry was tanking. Gaming consoles were growing. The board game industry at that time was pretty much dead, at least in my mind. And so I really forgot about it. And, 10 years later, started playing Settlers and getting into other more, and I know we talk on your podcast, Settlers comes up quite a bit. And I'm going to say it's Catan.
Oh,
That's my pronunciation,
I know.
Catan. Now I'm
I
Canadian.
know.
You can blame it on me being Canadian.
It is. It is. Oh my gosh, at least my third Canadian that I can think of the top of my head. And it is Catan in Canada. And I'm like, the whole country's wrong. But anyway.
Yeah, it's Catan. So no, I'm sticking with it. Yeah. So Settlers of Catan. So we played a lot of that. But again, another game where there was a lot of fighting started, you just get the bad initial setup of the game, and there you are. If you're playing with 5 people, you're cooking 2.5 hours, twiddling your thumbs, waiting for this painful death to finally realize itself, right? Like it excruciating. And we had all the expansions and everything. So I kind of shelved that. And then it was, literally like 3.5 years ago. I was at my brother's house. Now he's much older. He's in his 30s now. And he was, I think it was like Dino Island or one of these games that he had backed on Kickstarter. And he's like, "Oh yeah, my brother-in-law just backed this game, or Dino Park, I think it was called." And I said, "Oh, tell him to bring it over." And he starts laughing at me, and he's like, "Well, no, he backed it. He doesn't get it for like a year."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "A year? What? What do you mean a year?"
Yeah, that's if you're lucky.
yeah. Nowadays, if you're lucky, especially with shipping.
Yeah.
And then that's what started the conversation. He goes, "What about that tanks game we used to always play?"
Oh man.
When you're younger, he goes, "You should put that on Kickstarter." And I'm like, I don't know, man. But then, I started thinking about it. And, my day job is, I sell and market supplements, right, in Canada. So we sell vitamins across the country. It's a business I own. And we have a boutique marketing agency where we help, small and medium-sized businesses with their marketing here in Canada. So I had already accumulated a lot of the knowledge of what I would, the skill set I would need to design, manufacture, source, all of that. What I didn't know was Kickstarter, but I knew it was an area that I wanted to learn about, microfunding and crowdfunding. So that's what kind of led this path down to, let's see if we can launch this game on Kickstarter. And, I got bitten by the bug, right, of the game design bug and the publishing bug. And, it kind of went from there.
And now you can't turn it off.
And now I can't turn it off. And I think most, designers can probably speak to this to say that, once you're in, it's almost an addiction, right? Okay, what's the next one? What am I going to do next?
Well, that's the problem that my partner has is he gets every game to about 80%. And it's like, no, we gotta finish some of these so we can make money to make the next one and make the next one. But yeah, we have a lot in the pipeline, so hopefully we'll get some more going. So what game are you currently playing?
I got a lot of stuff on my table right now. I would say that what I'm probably playing the most of on game nights. And again, in Canada, we've had lockdowns, through COVID, and it's opened up south of the border a little bit faster than it has up here. So there's still reduced capacities. I think they just finally opened up capacities, but still indoor masks and so forth. So a lot of the game nights that we had in these meetup groups that I would go to are all done. They're going to be done they still won't be back for another year. So it's mainly with Adam and I playing games. He's my main kind of game bud. So we'll play right now we're playing Favor of the Pharaoh. I don't know if you know that one. It's a classic. It's a dice manipulation game. Love it. Finally found it. I played this at a game night a couple years ago, and I was like, oh my God, I want to get this game. And everywhere I looked for it, it was quite pricey and it'd have to be shipped in from out of country. And then I happened to be in a store about 3 weeks ago and I saw it on the shelf. I was like, no way, they got Favor of the Pharaoh. So we've been playing that a lot. Been playing a lot of Chai from the Kazmaiers. That's a great game. I love it. I've been playing Dominion. Dominion, something again, played during game nights, but never actually owned my own copy. So recently we've bought our own copy. We've been playing Dominion quite a bit. Those are kind of the core ones. I think most game nights will usually end with a lighter one like Patchwork or something like that. Azul, I know, is a favor of a lot of people. That's one I'll play often with my dad because it's one of his favorite games. So when I visit him, we'll play Azul. I'm a bit Azuled out now just because I've played it so much. So if I'm playing it, it's because it's my dad's favorite game, not necessarily because I want to pull it out. But kudos to companies like that where they create a game that you play so much that you get sick of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. When COVID started and all the lockdowns and stuff started happening, and my son and I played a lot of games together. So we were playing a lot of the Ticket to Ride, the city editions. So like the where they were smaller boards and quicker hits and stuff like that. Man, we played the just absolute crap out of New York. Then London came, London had come out, so we bought that. Then we played the crap out of London, and then we were like, Amsterdam. Well, let's pre-order this one, and so that one came out just to have some variety in our Ticket to Ride Cities editions. But I mean, we've played. I mean, if you combine them all together, I think we've played close to 50 times those three games combined together. Just because they're fast, they're quick, and we can get them in before bedtime. But keeps it fresh so we don't hit the point where we're like, oh, this game again. But it's awesome that you found the game. So when did Favor the Pharaoh, like, I'm not even familiar with this game. How old is it?
I mean, short answer is I don't know. It was a Bazier Games. Bazier Games is the manufacturer. It's got to be at least 8 years old, at least, I think. I'll have to look up the date on it. It's on my shelf, but yeah, it's fun. It's it's dice manipulation. You're trying to you use your dice to buy different abilities. So it's almost like you're building up your dice as you go. And then at the end, once someone triggers their 7 of a kind, so kind of like the classic Yahtzee dice manipulation, 7 of a kind, you unlock basically the queen. And once you unlock the queen, then you have a roll off. And based on that to determine who basically wins the Favor of the Pharaoh. So it's cool. I like it. I love the dice manipulation. And
I'm just glad you found your Grail game. Everybody's got that game they're trying to find. The problem is whenever I find my Grail game, I just find another one to go hunt down. So
yeah, I would say another Grail game that I haven't had on the table in a while because again I play this more in my game night. Now I think most people are like this too, where you have certain games that you play with certain people.
Oh yes,
right.
Yes.
So like the Zool with my dad, right? Adam and I will play Favor of the Pharaoh. My kids will be playing Ticket to Ride and things like that. But another one I like is Pandemic Contagion. So it's part of the Pandemic universe, but I think it's the only versus game in that.
Is that the dice rolling one?
No, there's cards. Oh. So you got these little cubes, and you are the virus in this. So each virus is competing to infect the world, which is kind of messed up.
A little spot on
nose
right
too,
now.
right? Yeah,
a little
COVID edition, but yeah, it's but it is a fun game, and it's contained. It's a small box. I wish they had made the box like a quarter of an inch bigger because everything would have fit better in it versus this kind of like jigsaw puzzle every time you try to put the game away. But
I've decided there's two kinds. There's boxes that are way too big or not quite big enough. There's never the perfect size box.
Oh yeah. I sometimes get these games and it's like, are they mad at us? Is that why this is designed this way? There's no way to organize the stuff in here. It's just shoved in baggies.
Yeah.
Like
my
is
favorite
like 80 style, right? Like 70. This is actually 70 style of game design.
Just chuck it in the box. My favorite example of that is Rhino Hero Super Battle. It comes in this massive, like old school Monopoly box, right?
Yeah.
Huge box. You open it up and like the biggest piece is like an 8x8 square, and everything else is, like you said, just thrown in there. And there's just insert that's just cardboard that's dipped. There's no divider. You just shovel the whole thing in there. And yet it's by Haba, and Haba sells their games, and whatever their MSRP is dictates the size of the box. So if it's a $30 game, you get this box. Do you need
Yeah.
that big of a? Absolutely not. But it's $30, so you're getting that box.
I think they make an insert. I mean, it's not like, you're in the game design publishing. The insert is not it's not rocket science, right? To do a
No.
cheap insert. Like, it really isn't. Like, another one I have that's actually, I love the game, is Acquire. I don't know if you've ever played Acquire, but
That was
same.
my Grail game. I just got it.
Oh,
I love it. Oh my
does
lord.
yours have an insert? Mine doesn't have an insert.
What version do you have? There's like
Oh,
100
mine's like one of the
versions.
original ones. It's like they were
Yeah,
mad when they made this version. I don't know.
I have the original 3M edition,
Okay.
the bookshelf edition,
Oh,
and
nice.
so yeah, it's cool. It is cool as all get out, and so it's pretty well divided. It does a pretty good job, but I've seen some versions that are like it's
Mine's in
kind
baggies.
of
Lots and lots of baggies. But you know what? I think that's part of my my kind of bucket list in the next probably 5 years is 3D printing. I want to kind of dive into that, and I'll make my own inserts. And I know it's a slippery slope to go down. It's a rabbit hole, but
yeah.
that is something I would like to get into too at some point.
Yeah, I've been really holding out on it, but I got a coworker now who's all about 3D printing, and so I'll ask him if he can print me something, and it's like he's got it for me the next day, and I'm like, I didn't need it right away. It's like, oh, I'm just sitting around and thought, oh, just print this off. I'm like,
Oh yeah, even for game
oh
design,
man,
right? So if you need a piece, you go
oh
on Thingiverse, you can download like the piece you need. This past year, when we did our last campaign, Nutty Squirrels of the Oakwood Forest, we needed minis for that. I had someone who actually sculpted them for me, but they are more of a animation 3D maker versus an actual sculptor. So I had to teach myself how to use Blender to actually turn those into STL files that I can use for minis, like things like that, right? It's skills that come in handy somewhere.
so so right now I picked up a copy. I was been looking for a while, and I love eBay and
Yeah.
Facebook Marketplace, and because you'll always find somebody who just doesn't quite know what they've got, right? So I've been looking for the game called Circus Maximus. Came out in 1980 by Avalon Hill, and it's a chariot racing game like the final
Mm.
scene of Ben-Hur.
Mm-hmm.
So the board is like this huge 3-foot board, and it's a hippodrome, you know? Well, if you go to Thingiverse, they have a 3D arena that you can print that has like stands
Oh,
that
that's
sit
cool.
around it to make it look like a huge coliseum and the spina down the middle. And my buddy's like, "Oh yeah, we can print that. That's nothing." And I'm like, "That's a lot." He's like, "Oh, it's probably." And he comes back the next day. He's like, "It's about a quarter of a reel, and it'll take about 40 hours to print." I'm like, 40 hours? He's like, "Oh, that's nothing." And I'm
He
like,
just sets it up and walks away, right?
yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay, man, whatever you say. So we're working on printing up the Hippodrome Coliseum for Circus Maximus. So
Oh, that'd be cool.
it'll be something. I don't know. Cool.
It's a lot of paint if you're going to paint it too.
Well, we're gonna print it all off in tan. So if we choose not to paint it, it'll kind of look,
Yeah.
stonish. So before the pandemic, did you go to the office? Did you always work from home?
Office and still at the office. So this is actually my office I'm in right now. And yeah, we have a small company, so we're able to have most of our team members work remotely. Being one of the owners, I benefited from getting to come to the office, and then that gives me my escape where I can come and focus on games and kind of separate work from home. So yeah, it's been great, and it allows us to. I mean, we play a lot of games here, right?
That's what I was
On the
going to ask.
boardroom
You play
table.
games
Oh
at
yeah,
lunch?
not at
Nice.
lunch. I know you've asked other guests this question, and I would say actually never. I never play games at lunch, not once.
That's
I
how I
think,
get to meet everybody in my company. Is I find out who plays games, and we
yeah.
start playing at lunch, and other people poke their heads in, and next thing you know, I've got people from all over playing games at lunch.
Here's my challenge. I usually use my lunches to catch up on news, or prepare for, like, when you're throughout the workday, you don't always have time to sit and, like, for instance, watch a video, right? So if there's a video you need to watch for something, whether it's a podcast guest or something else business related, I'll usually use my time for that. So I'll make my lunch, and then if there's some video content I have to consume, that's when I'll be consuming that content, because I'm not actually having to do anything but shovel food in my mouth, right, with my hands. I don't need to type or anything, right? So, but we do play a lot of games at the end of the day, so evenings. So, an evening where, Adam's on his way back from work, he'll pop in at the office here, and we'll do, crank out, 3 hours of games, so we'll try at least to play 2 or 3 games. And then we'll usually dedicate a good 40-45 minutes to brainstorming, just ideas and design thoughts and so forth.
Nothing wrong with that. That's for sure. So what would your go-to 30-minute game be?
That's an excellent question, because the tough part is, because 2 players, a lot of these games that might take an hour, you can actually get through. Like Favor of the Pharaoh is a good example of this, right? He and I cranked through a game of that the other day in 20 minutes. When I played this during my game night and there was 4 of us playing, it was an hour-long game. So most of the games we're playing right now are 30 to 40 minutes, but I would say my go-to would probably be, I would say with my kids, I like to play Love Letter, Saboteur, some of those quick kind of.
Saboteur.
I love Saboteur.
I haven't played that in a while.
Small box game. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. Parade, a card game. Parade is another good one. I'll play that with
Alice
my dad.
Wonderland.
Yeah, again, it depends on the audience, right? So my dad, he's getting older, so there's certain games that he's kind of got locked in on how to play, and so it's easier to play a game that he knows. So Parade with him, kids will play Love Letter, Saboteur, and then Adam and I will usually crank through a game that's typically a 45-minute to an hour-long game with 4 people, and we'll do that in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Patchwork is a good example of that. Love Patchwork.
Yeah, I haven't played Patchwork yet.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, everybody's got it, and I have not had a chance to play it with anybody yet. So hopefully, as the restrictions keep lifting, I'll be able to hang out with somebody that has it. So a go-to 60-minute, 1-hour game.
We've been playing a lot of Lanterns. So I love Lanterns. I'll play that one with the kids, and quite frankly, I'll play that with the in-laws as well, like Adam and his in-laws. And often we'll play Ticket to Ride, still a classic. Love playing that with the family. It really is one of those evergreens. Like, it's tough to ever get. I don't think I would ever get sick of that game.
I like the fact that they keep. I like how they started off where they did Ticket to Ride, then they did Ticket to Ride Europe.
Yeah.
And then they were like, this is dumb to keep charging this huge price just to get all these plastic trains. So we're just going to make a map with the ticket cards, and you bring your base game to it. And I'm like, that makes more sense than anything else, right? But yeah, instead of having all these big, thick boxes, you just have I have Ticket to Ride, the original US, then a couple of the expansion maps.
Mm-hmm.
And man, you can go down a rabbit hole if you get onto Board Game Geek and look at all the fan-made ones. Oh my goodness. People have gone crazy with that.
There was a Kickstarter recently for, and they weren't even affiliated with the Ticket Ride, like the company that makes Ticket to Ride, but they were doing these custom trains. Did you see that Kickstarter?
I did, and my son was so mad at me because I didn't back it. I'm like, dude, they were gorgeous.
Yeah, but not
gorgeous. Cheap. Oh no.
I almost backed it. I'm like, wait a second, that's one train.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's not bad. It's like, and you get to pick which one. One? No, thanks. I did pick up the breast cancer awareness pink trains that are on sale now. Cool. So I think they were like $5 and $2 or whatever it goes. I'm like, you can have my $5. I'll take the pink train set. But I mean, I downloaded one. I haven't printed it off yet, but it's Springfield from The Simpsons. And so it's like this map of Springfield that you piece together, and then it gives you all the destination tickets, and you just play with your regular deck.
Oh, that'd be cool. That's like a print and play?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
If you go, just be careful, because there's some crazy ones in there. They're nuts. I mean, there's like one for like Antarctica, and I'm like, Antarctica? No, nobody lives there, man. But Yeah, and you can get on there and you just print them off and you
Just
know
connecting ice flows and glaciers, eh?
yeah, try to sneak up into South America or something. But yeah, I Ticket to Ride they did one at the beginning of the pandemic as a print and play. You probably have to Google it now, but it was like the stay at home edition,
Mhm.
and it took place in a house. There was like a floor plan of a house, and you had to get from like the dining room table to the bedroom. It was hilarious, and that one required you to like have a base game, obviously, and count out you because it was a smaller board. You didn't need all the trades, so you had to like count them out and stuff. But we've played that a few times. The son and I thought it was now it was just funny because you're trying to get from like sister's room to brother's room, and like we in the Bear's house, you know. What would be a guilty pleasure game for you? Obviously, Favor of the Pharaoh.
I'm gonna say Saboteur. The
Oh yeah,
Saboteur, I would even say, yeah, Saboteur. I'd say is still. I mean, I would never say no to playing that game ever, not once. I love it so much, and
yeah,
Board Game Arena. And I did this during the pandemic because again, I was most people I gamed with were people I would game with at social events, right, at
right.
meetups and so forth. So there's not as many hardcore gamers in my actual family, which are the people that you're locked
Stuck
up
with.
with, right? Not stuck, but you're locked up with
No,
during
you're
COVID,
stuck. I was stuck.
right? So I played a lot of Board Game Arena, and they've got a very good version of Saboteur on Board Game Arena, and I just love it. Love Letter's another good one. I would say is a classic. That's an evergreen, good one to play with the kids. Very very quick.
Yep.
But yeah, the guilty pleasure, that one I just love, and I love being the Saboteur. If I draw the Saboteur card, it just tickles me. I love it.
Oh man, I haven't played that in so long, and it's always. I mean, it's not expensive at all.
No, you get it for like, well, I don't know, it was in the States, but Canada maybe
I'm
$12.
gonna say 10, 10, 12 bucks. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cheap. All right, color. Do you have a specific color that you gravitate towards when playing a game?
No,
You
no, I
just
don't.
don't care, just one in the game.
But let me qualify that is that I typically will choose a color that is contrasted, has the most contrast versus the other players versus the other colors, just because I get confused easy. So, if I'm
Fair
playing,
enough.
if I'm playing like, you know, Risk, I'll pick yellow, right? Because it just contrasts versus everything. The board, it's contrast against literally everything else, so it's very easy to track your pieces. Um, but yeah, I don't really fixate on colors. I tend not to pick blue or green, even though I love both those colors as colors. Often most games have them that they're too close to each other, and again, it's tough to kind of tell your pieces apart and get mixed up with other people and so forth. So yeah, it doesn't matter to me. Sometimes I'll pick a color if I know it's someone else's favorite color. I'll grab it first
Oh, there you go.
just for the negotiation. So they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's my favorite. Oh, you know what? Here, you can have it. It's your favorite color. You have it." And hopefully, you've got some goodwill before you start the game, right? I'll
Remember when I
carry it through
gave
later on.
you? Remember when I gave you the
Exactly.
red?
Look
Yeah.
at the color you're playing with. That was because of me. We're buds, right? Yeah, you can trade with me now. Give me those two
Yeah.
sheep.
I always go grab the Monopoly car when I know we're playing Monopoly. Just put that in my pocket, you know. Yeah, I'll take the shoe. Where's the car? Oh, the car. I don't know where the car is. No. Actually, I read a book. Oh my goodness, I don't remember which Monopoly book it was. I read a whole bunch of them in a row. I think it was called Everything I Know About Business I Learned from Monopoly,
Okay.
and it and it talks about like the psychology of the shoe. Nobody picks the shoe. It's the most unused piece in the game, and how they think psychologically it means like he's the weakest player if he picks the shoe. I'm like, there's a lot of money wasted on studying Monopoly pieces. Oh man, so we've already kind of talked about Kickstarter.
Mm.
Are you a backer as well as a creator?
Yeah, I'm actually both, and I had actually really good advice from a buddy of mine, Mike, who runs the Newmarket Board Game Meetup group in Newmarket, which is just outside of Toronto. And I remember my first campaign. I said, "Gosh, I'm trying to get trying to get the wheel moving here, right? And it's a grind. Like I'm having trouble getting, in Facebook forums, people to respond, engage with me. And he's like, I'm looking at your Kickstarter profile. Have you ever backed another game? And at the time I hadn't. And he goes, people look at that. They look at when you are publishing a game of your own, have you supported other people in the community? Because a good, chunk of this is community engagement, right? Often people will back games because they believe in the person, their story, even if it's $1, just say, I support what they're doing. That dollar isn't going anywhere other than to show that person support. And it's important, I think, to back other people's games especially if you're doing your own campaigns. And there's this bit of kind of pay it forward. So from that moment on, I started backing games, and I backed a bunch at that time. And now I find with the podcast, I'm often, because we go deeper on some of the games, and before we get on air and after we're off air, we'll be talking about the game and get into really the guts of the story of how the game came about, and things that you may not have picked up on the Kickstarter page that are actually part of the game. And when you have that kind of insight, it's very tough not to back a game when you kind of fall in love with the story and the game and so forth. So I literally I counted before we went on here, 15 different games I'm waiting to be fulfilled. Right. So I know that there's this train of games, 15 games that are going to be arriving at my door at some point. I thought that by now they'd be coming like once every 3 weeks or so, but because of COVID and all the shipping issues around the world, everything's been kind of pushed back. But I know next year there's going to be like a wave of games coming in, because I end up backing a lot of games, right? Just to see a game and I'd be like, wow, this is right up my alley. And after I was done the interview, I'd actually just go and back them. So, that's important, I think, to really kind of, even if it's $1, and I would encourage people to do that. And I've done that so many times where it might not be a game for me, but I love the person's story. So I'll say, you know what, I'm going to throw $1 away just because I want to let people know that I support you.
Yeah, a lot of times, like I've said before, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll throw whatever the print and play level is.
Yeah.
$3, whatever. So I've got like a whole hard drive of print and plays that
Yep.
I might someday print and play. But yeah, I think, like you said, backing is so important. And it's also important because you have followers, and then so they get an email saying,
Yeah.
hey, James backed this game. And so I'm like, well, James and I have similar tastes. Let me see what this game's all about. And then I'm like, ooh, I like that game. Then I back it. Then my followers get it emailed, and their followers, and and you can really chain reaction a pretty good amount of little, people backing, and like you said, pay it forward. And
Yeah, and I think also for like on the podcast side. So one thing I want to mention about the podcast is we don't run any ads. It's all self funded, and like we don't take games. Right? People think, oh, you're gonna have a podcast. People must send you tons of games. You must get a bunch of free stuff. We don't do any of that. So if there's a game that somebody sees me saying, hey, today I've got a box opening. This arrived in the mail. I've personally backed that game. Like that game wasn't given to me by a publisher. That was me backing that game because I believed in that game. And, that's something that we really highlight, that if we do, highlight a game on our podcast that that's arrived at the door and I've got a physical copy, I'm showing it because it's something I believe in. Right. And it's something I was willing to put my own money into. So just kind of wanted to mention that.
I got an email this afternoon. Actually, here's my tracking number for UPS package, and I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I
What is it?
wish they would. I wish they would say you're blah blah blah. And I'm like, I have
Yeah.
no idea. And like I've got 8 or 10 out there, and I'm like, I don't know what's going to show up.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I guess we'll find out in a few days, and
And
I'll
I
see
know,
what
like,
it is.
for some people out there might be like, I don't know if, backing a game, there's a lot of risk and so forth. There's so few and far between now, the stories of people not getting the games they backed. When I back, I just kind of put it out of my mind, because what I don't want to do is then constantly have that eager anticipation of, when's the game coming? When's the game coming? It's going to come, get here when it gets here. And I just try to,
Yeah.
push it out of my mind, but it's tough to do sometimes, especially if it's a
Well,
game
that's
you
the
really want to play. Right.
well, that's the binge of like the $3 print and plays, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, $3, and I get it, and I print it off, and I'm really right now, because of COVID and not being able to play in person, I've really become addicted with the rolling rights.
Mm.
and there's been a ton of those hitting
Yeah.
Kickstarter for like less than $5. And I pay my $3, $4. My buddy pays his $3 or $4, so we both have the game, and then we play together over lunch or whatever. Like, oh well, yeah, I rolled a 1, 2, and a 3. Okay, I'll use the 3, and because that's the world we live in right now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, $3. I'll tell you what, some of those things, man, yeah, like 2,000 backers at like $3 a piece. I'm like, that's pretty good since your overhead is zero on that
Yeah.
game. You've made the files. You just email the files. I'm like, whew, that
Yeah. I
is
had a guest interviewed. I'm trying to remember her name. She does dice towers. So she designs dice towers.
that's awesome.
And her camp, she was hitting like $250,000 on her campaign.
That's insane.
And it's her time and energy. That's it. Is like it's literally an electronic file that she's kickstarting. And when you look at those campaigns, it's like, wow. That's kind of the holy grail. If you can give something that's got the consistency of air and make money off of that, with just the effort going in, but no financial investment. Granted, I mean, computers and so forth should invest, but still, like
Sure.
those are cool campaigns. The other thing I've really noticed too is that, like, you're seeing a lot of roll and writes lately. I've noticed on Kickstarter the things seem to happen in waves, right? So if you go back a year and a half ago, there's like a ton of pirate games. Like everybody seemed to want some pirate games, right? Like all at the same time.
Yeah.
Then there was a bunch of polyomino games, right? And there was like 3 or 4 of them in a row. It seems that when the crowd kind of gravitates towards a style of game and so forth, you seem to see a lot of them come out at the same time, which is just kind of an interesting observation more than anything.
Yeah, now you're right. I mean, there's a ton of there was a batch there for a while. It was racing games.
Yeah,
So many
yeah.
racing games.
Right now, actually,
And
yeah.
yeah. And my son and I, that's like what we play. That's why I was trying to I was chasing out Circus Maximus. I wanted to play a chariot racing game.
Yeah.
Like, let's do this. It was in a book that we read. I read my son board game books as bedtime stories.
Put him to
And
sleep.
he's so mad that tonight I probably won't be able to read to him tonight.
No.
We're reading more board game education, and it's a great book. They're about 6 pages about a game, and they talk about ways you could like educational things that this game teaches you. One of them was Connect Four. One of them was Othello, and just Ticket to Ride. And so it's just been like that. And then before that, we read the compilation Family Games and Hobby Games, the 100 Best. And we went through it. We read those books, and we'd read the chapter and be like, "Yeah, that game's not for us." And then we wouldn't, but then we read like Circus Maximus, and we're like, "A chariot racing game? We got to find this thing." And so we found it. I found a game called Regatta where you're racing yachts.
Oh, cool.
It's like from the 60s, man. And it's like,
A buddy of mine, I think, is doing, I'm not sure if it's that one. Analog Game Studios, Richard McRae. He's got a yacht game coming out, I believe, this fall.
Oh, man.
Like in 2022, and I know he's been working on that. And I think it's a reprint of like a game from like the 70s or 80s. It might even be that one. I don't know. It looks pretty cool.
It's so funny because like as I'm reading the rules, I'm having to I have to keep the glossary handy because I don't know these sailing terms.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's a yacht racing game. I'm like, how can I not have a yacht racing game?
Yeah.
But then Kickstarter, man, I backed at least 2 racing games. I'm getting ready to back another one right now.
Is it Megapulse? Megapulse comes out
No, that started tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm set to back that one tomorrow morning. I'm sure
cool.
that's not good. I think that board looks amazing.
Yeah.
I think they've done a great job with the board and just making it different and with the lights and the neon. I'm like,
it's all neon. Yeah, it's got a Tron kind of feel to it. You're in these hover bikes. It's got a mitigating factor in there that so if someone gets too far ahead, it's not like the race is over. There's a catch up mechanic, and yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at that one. There's the other one I'm looking at is a card game called War. I think it's what it's called.
Okay.
It's a car racing game. So you have it's like a deck of cards, and so you have a base car, and then you apply different things to it.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm like, Like, why not? I mean, it fits in with all the rest of the racing games I have. But that's, my son likes cars and racing. Millborn is really what kind of got us going and like getting more and more racing games. We
Mm.
had Downforce, we had Formula D. Again, reading that stupid book for that, I just, oh my god, I read that book and we just keep writing down more and more games to go by. And Millborn is like from like the '60s or the '50s, and it's like this game's amazing, and it's a phenomenal card game about just racing to 1,000 milestones.
Oh, that's cool.
It is the fastest game I've ever, because I track in my app, my board gaming app,
Yeah.
because it's the fastest climbing game I've ever. Like, it went in like 4 months, 5 months. It went from just bought it to the second most played game in my collection.
Oh, wow.
We played it over 40 times in 6 months.
Holy smokes.
It's just, yeah, just don't get tired of playing it. That's the problem. You don't get tired of playing that game.
That's something I don't do, and I know a lot of people in the industry do this, is actually track number of times they play, who wins. My buddy does that. He kept a logbook every time we go to a meetup. He would
Oh
have like,
yeah.
what do we play? And he'd write down who placed in what order of the game. And he had all the stats. And I was like, that's a lot of effort.
Well, so at my last job, we used Microsoft Access as a database for
Yeah.
work. And to teach myself Microsoft Access, I created a database that would track gaming.
Oh, that's cool.
So I could learn all the different ways to, a rolling form, and, this is feeding that, and that's feeding this, and how does this open? And so, but yeah, then we had to stop because some people started not playing a game because they weren't winning it enough. So they wouldn't play at lunch because they didn't want to hurt their win rating. And I'm like,
you gotta
this
care,
is not...
but you can't care that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's bigger things in life.
Well, I'm not playing Ticket to Ride if he's playing Ticket to Ride because he always wins.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
That's one of my favorite sayings. I'll be playing a game and someone starts getting like really serious about it. And I say, guys, we're not curing cancer here.
No.
We're just playing a game, man. It's all good.
It's just a game.
My life will not change whether I win or lose this game. There's nothing in my life that depends on the outcome of this particular game at this moment.
Let's hope not. I'd be screwed, man. I can't win a game half the time. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, playing all these old games like I've been playing lately, like Acquire, and to think the game came out in like the mid '60s, and it's like, holy cow! And this game is just that game is aces. I love that game. I could play that game every day and not get tired of that game. I'm pretty sure. And yeah, you track down some weird ones when you read these old books, and you're like, oh, what's this game? And I found a guy at a toy fair who specializes in games from 1950 to 2000.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, let's talk. I've got a list of games.
I actually have a Monopoly. I have an Star Wars Episode 1 Monopoly still in a shrink wrap. And it's funny. People are like, wow, like, did you do that because it's like a collector's item? And I was like, no, because I hate the game and I never play it. There was zero reason for me to open that game. I already have like 4 other copies of Monopoly.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to have so many Monopoly boards, and I just went through and just got rid of them all. If it didn't change the game any.
Yeah, we've got
Monopoly's
the core,
Monopoly.
And we've got the junior Monopoly, obviously, for the kids. Monopoly Deal, which I actually quite like Monopoly Deal. I don't know if you've played that one.
Card game.
Yeah,
right?
The card game. Get it at Walmart for like $8. And it is, anytime I recommend, people say, oh, what's a good 2-player card game? I'll say, well, get Monopoly Deal. It's a great game. I'll say, I don't really like Monopoly. I'm like, it's skinned under the Monopoly theme, but it really doesn't have a lot to do with how you actually play Monopoly, right? It's very, very loosely based on that. But you can crank through a game in like 15 minutes, right? Like, it's very, very
15,
quick.
20 minutes, yeah.
And you can play tournament style. So it's like, okay, let's play, best 3 of 5 or whatever. And yeah, it's a fun game.
But yeah, we've been playing like with 2-player. A game that's coming out that I just backed on Kickstarter, but I reviewed it a while back. It was called Chili Mafia. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yep.
Oh man, that game is a riot. And my wife, we were very careful when my son and I, when we decided to teach mom a new game.
Yeah.
That we don't want to waste her time or ours, right? We don't want to teach her a game that when it's all over, she's like, this game is too complicated, or this game, she'll play complicated games. It's getting her to learn it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Chili Mafia, it's worth it. And we've played that one, oh my gosh, over 20 times. We just keep, that's another one that's going to climb up there so fast. I backed it on Kickstarter with like every expansion pack and bonus card. I'm like, if it's a card that goes in the game, I want it because I want to keep as much replayability in this game as I can. Oh, it is a blast, man. And because it starts off with like sweet chilies are level 1, but then like the Carolina Reapers at number 10, and they are various. As they get hotter, they get more valuable, and
Yeah.
it's hilarious. And we play that one a lot. And so yeah, and when people ask me, what do you guys playing? I'm like, well, right now we're playing a game that I backed on Kickstarter, so it's not available yet, but you should definitely be looking for it.
How often do you play your own games?
That's a good question. So when they're first being play tested and everything, we play them a lot. So with Fences, we played it a lot at work.
Mm-hmm.
That's where Tim and I developed it, and we had such a great group of coworkers that all had different play styles. And so we'd play, or we wouldn't play. We'd observe, and then as you would see, oh, this is kind of broken, or that's too dominant of a strategy, and balance this or balance that. But then when we were doing the expansion pack, which we're hoping to launch next year with 9 different expansions, was right when COVID hit. And so so over lunch, because that's what we did, we were holding Zoom meetings over lunch, and we put the camera, my phone, up in the dining room fixture, down onto the tabletop, and we would put an N for north, so we know which way, because we could never tell when we would put the camera up there which way it would say was up. And then we would play the game over Zoom, and we'd be placing the tiles over, and my son was down there helping, playing with us at the end. It was a lot of fun. And then with Shark Hunt, the quick story behind that, it was a game by John Kahn. It was a 1v1, or just a one solo game. Sorry, it was just you against the shark. And again, it was a print and play. I think I paid $3 for it. And man, my son played that to death. He would sit over there, and I taught him how to use hash marks, like 4, then 5. You do the cross them all, and he would play that game for an hour, and it only takes like 5, maybe 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And he would just, oh, stupid shark, and then he'd reset and play, and then, yeah, I got the shark, and he'd make his mark, and then it was great. And so then when I decided that we were going to license it and play it, then a lot of playtesting went into, okay, we want to make it multiplayer, multi-shark. How does this rule work? How does that rule work? Oh, well, we can't do this. We can't. Well, if we do this, we can't do that. And we played that a lot. So right now we're really focused on getting Shark Hunt out there. So I played a lot as I'm demoing it at various places. But yeah, as a family, we don't play a lot of Fences or Shark Hunt right now. We will when we get ready to start launching Fences, the Ranch Edition. We'll get back to playing all the expansions again.
Yeah, I find with you always have obviously heavy play test mode up until you launch, right? And I always find it interesting when you go from the pendulum kind of swings, right? When you first have a game you've created, you're always pushing people to play the game, right? So you're like, oh, you want to try? Can you do me a favor? Let's try this. Let's play this one tonight as well. And I used to find that with the Thanks But No Thanks game. So I stopped pushing, right? I stopped saying, like, with family and friends, I'd stop pulling it out. But what I find is really cool is you will reach a moment where they'll start swinging back the other way, where people actually start asking to play, right? And they'll say, hey, why don't we play tanks? We haven't played that in a while. It's like, oh, and it's almost like, really? Right? So you pull it out and you play, and I think that's pretty cool. The only game I have that I've done, published, that is played, gets a lot of play time. Quite frankly, we were wearing out decks of cards, is the Queen of Scots, the card game. This is a game that the designer we have on there is my grandmother. She's now 103. She played this game with 2 decks of cards when she was a kid. Like, she taught me when I was a kid. She used to play with my mom when she was a kid. She learned to play from her parents. So this game is literally 100 years old. And so we published this game as the second game Kickstarter we did, and we did it as kind of like a birthday present for her, right? So for her 102nd birthday, we took her game, we reskinned it under the story of Mary Queen of Scots, because there's 2 queens in the game, right? So we made the whole thing around the story of the 2 queens, and her name is on the box. But she's still living, right? And she's still doing well. And I check on her every single day, and we play that game every single morning before I come to work.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's such a these are memories that I will carry for years to come.
Absolutely.
Years when she is maybe not with us, but it's one of those things where I'm reminded on a daily basis of how important gaming is in connecting people. Right. So her memory's starting to fade, but she can play that game and she knows the rules down pat. Right. She might say the same story 2 or 3 times, during the game while we're talking. But man, she will still beat me more than half the time when we're playing that game. And it is just, it's awesome, right? It's awesome. That's what gets me still staying in this industry and doing this. That's part of the addiction for me, is to, you're not just creating a game for somebody to buy, right? You're literally creating an experience for other people, right? And the enjoyment that you get out of seeing other people have a moment or memory or an experience built out of something you created, it's just such an incredible feeling, right? And for me, that's what gets me going in this industry.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's amazing. 103 and still whooping you in the card game.
Still beat me again today.
Yeah. And this is why you don't track your gaming, because you don't want to know how bad you're getting.
It's funny because this game actually comes with a pad of paper with the scores.
Oh.
So you can actually rifle through and see it, because again, her memory's starting to fade. So she'd be like, so you beat me. And she's like, but that's just because you've been beating me for the past couple of games. I'm like, well, let me flip the page. Yeah, I beat you yesterday, but the 2 days before that, you beat me twice in a row. Right. So, I'm able to remind her that, no, you're actually still ahead in this journey.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Cool. Well, James, I'd like to thank you for being on the show today. People want to reach out to you. How can they do that?
Yeah, 2 ways. So we got the Board Game Binge podcast. I would love it if people would give us a subscription there. Simply go to wherever your favorite podcast is and just type in Board Game Binge and you'll find us. Love the subscription there. They can find us there. If you're a publisher of a game or a designer, or you're doing something in the board game industry that you think might be interesting for that podcast, reach out to us. If we have a slot, maybe we can talk. On the Tin Robot Games side, we do have a Kickstarter right now that we're publishing with James Freeman, who's well known in the industry. This is his first game, Hamsters versus Hippos. It's on Kickstarter right now. You can literally find that just by typing in Hamsters versus VS Hippos.
It comes right up. There's no scrolling.
It's going to come up pretty much immediately. Or if you actually go hamstersvshippos.com, it'll redirect you to that page. Love your pledge. That runs for another 10 days, already funded. So we're very excited about that. Or just check us out on any of our social media handles at Tin Robot Games. You can find us. Love to have you as part of our community.
Excellent. And as usual, you can reach me at facebook.com/eatlunchandboardgame or email me at eatlunchandboardgame@gmail.com. And remember, board games build bridges.
That they do.
Stay in tune with all things sports around Indiana and the nation with the Crash Course Podcast. Each week, we tackle the big storylines from the world of the Colts, Pacers, and the Indiana college scene, while also keeping a pulse on the nation. We record live weekly at twitch.tv/3C Media and can be found on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard, you can catch the Crash Course Podcast.
When you're gaming, why not be comfy? Go over to supportplayer.org. Click on the cards, pieces, and dice to get some merch. These t-shirts are some of the most comfortable I have ever worn. That's supportplayer.org, and there's a link on eatlunchandboardgame.com.